Supposed to speak for a few more minutes, after which we'll have factor analysis. Now back to Kentucky.
Ladies and gentlemen of Kentucky, are over. Is that okay? Those days are over. It's crazy. You know what that is? Much more than 60,000 factories. You know what that is? It's like, I said, if you have a map, how do you put that many dots in the map, right? More than 60,000 factories, but they're all coming back. You see them coming back. You see car companies that we're going to build elsewhere, and now they're saying that because of Trump, we're going to build in Michigan, we're going to build in Ohio, we're going to build in Kentucky. They're saying it loud and clear. Because from now on, it's going to be America first. America first. We will be, I promise you, a rich nation once again. And we will do what we have to do, and we will not allow other countries to take advantage of us like they've been doing to a level that's hard to believe. Hard to believe. Not going to happen. Not going to happen anymore, Kentucky. Remember that, okay? You just worry about your basketball team. I'll take care of the rest. But to be a rich nation, we must also be a safe nation. That is why I am following through on my promise to secure, protect, and defend the borders of the United States. We will build, that's right, a great, great border wall. And you know, it's already out to bid. You've probably been reading tremendous numbers of bidders. What does that mean when you have a lot of bidders? It means we're going to get it for the right price, okay? Believe me. And we will stop the drugs that are pouring into our country and poisoning our youth and plenty of others. To stop the drugs. A lot of them are coming in from the southern border. Since the day of my election, we've already cut illegal immigration at the southern border by 61%. Think of that. 61% that we haven't started. And the courts are not making it easy, folks. They're not making it easy. Terrible. 61%. During the campaign, as I've traveled all across this great country, I met with many American families whose loved ones, sons and daughters, husbands and wives, were viciously killed by illegal immigrants. Incredible. Incredible. These amazing American lives were stolen because our government refused to enforce our already existing laws. These American victims and their families were ignored by the media. The media doesn't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. They were ignored by the consultants. They were ignored by Washington. But these Americans were not ignored by me. They were not ignored by you. You showed that on November 8th. They were not ignored by you, and they will never be ignored by any of us. As we speak tonight, we are finding the drug dealers, robbers, thieves, gang members, predators, killers, and criminals of all types preying on our citizens. You've been seeing it. you've been reading about it, and you've been seeing it. One by one, they are being tracked down and thrown the hell out of our country, and we will not let them back in. We are also working to protect our citizens from terrorism. We have seen the devastation at home, from 9/11 to Boston to San Bernardino and many, many other places. We've seen attacks overseas in France, in Germany, in Belgium. It's time for intelligence and common sense to be used. The single best way to protect, and you have to do this, you have to do this, and to keep foreign terrorists from attacking our country is to keep these foreign terrorists from entering our country in the first place. And we will stop radical Islamic terrorism. We will stop it. Not going to let it happen. Not here. Not going to let it happen. Finally, we want a very big tax cut, but cannot do that until we keep our promise to repeal and replace the disaster known as Obamacare. And we're going to be working very closely with our leader, Mitch McConnell, to get that job done. Paul Ryan, everybody, they're going to be working very hard. And Congressman Andy Barr and Jamie Comer, I have to thank them for their help and their support as we move toward the crucial House vote on Thursday. The 7th anniversary of Obamacare's very painful passage. This is our long-awaited chance to finally get rid of Obamacare. It's a long-awaited chance. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. What's the alternative? The alternative is what you have. What you have is nothing. The worst, it's the big lie. And remember this, so true. I happen to like a lot Senator Rand Paul. I do. I do. I like him. It's good. He's a good guy. And I look forward to working with him so we can get this bill passed in some form so that we can pass massive tax reform, which we can't do until this happens. So we got to get this done before we can do the other. In other words, we have to know what this is before we can do the big tax cuts. We got to get it done for a lot of time. Healthcare bill that no one read and no one understood. By the way, today it's thousands of pages more. Public, right through Congress. And this is what we have. It's time for Democrat leaders in Washington to take responsibility for knows how the architect of Obamacare said the law was passed because of the stupidity of the American voter. Or Bill Clinton on the campaign trail. Oh, he must have had a tough night when he went home. The Democratic governor of Minnesota, who said the Affordable Care Act is no longer affordable. It's been one broken promise after another. People heard of it. Are in tremendous trouble, will be fleeing, and we're going to save it all. We're going to save it all. Tremendous trouble. Their speech. They used the former governor of Kentucky. And the plan doesn't work in Kentucky. But Matt will save us. By the day, and yet you watch the fake media, the fake news. And they try and build it up. It's a disaster, fellas. It's a disaster. One of none. And in your state, it's worse. In a recent interview, your governor, half provider right now. It's a financial disaster waiting to happen right here in your own state. Big thing. Then we get to tax cuts. Big thing. And remember, we're going to times higher in the United States. You know why? Campaign contributions, who knows? But somebody's getting very rich. We're going to bring it down. We're going to have a great competitive bidding process. Medicine prices will be coming way down, way, way, way down, and that's going to happen fast. And we're just adding that to the bill. I said we got to add that to the bill. We're going to do a bill later. We're trying to add it to this bill, and if we can't, we're going to have it right after. You have some crazy arcane laws, folks, just in case you haven't heard. I am confident that if we empower the American people, we will accomplish incredible things for our country, not just on health care, but all across our government. And by the way, that Second Amendment is very, very safe right now. I promised. I said we're going to save the Second Amendment. I promised you we are going to save the Second Amendment. It's very, very safe. Would not be in good shape if a certain other person won this election, I can tell you. You'd not be happy. And if they came to make a speech, 250 people would have showed up. A new spirit of optimism is sweeping across our land, and a new national pride is swelling our hearts and stirring our souls. So true. Just imagine what we could accomplish if we stand together as a united American people. Our economy will be unleashed, and millions will be lifted from welfare to work. Work, gotta work. They're gonna love it. They're gonna love it. From welfare to work. Our children will grow up in safe communities, and they will be educated in schools that teach them to love our country and its values. Our inner cities will find a rebirth of hope, safety, and opportunity. And you know, your San Francisco quarterback, I'm sure nobody ever heard of him. I'm just reporting the news. There was an article today. I love to report the news, and then they said I made a mistake, right? I said, no, the people reporting the news made a mistake if it's wrong. But there was an article today, it was reported, that NFL owners don't want to pick them up because they don't want to get a nasty tweet from Donald Trump. Do you believe that? I just saw that. I just saw that. I said, if I remember that one, I'm going to report it to the people of Kentucky. Because they like it when people actually stand for the American flag, right? Our struggling industries are going to be revitalized, and our dying factories will come roaring back to life. It's already happening. And in our dealings with other nations, we will find a new era of security, cooperation, and peace. And we won't be played for the fool, and we won't be played for the suckers any longer. This is the future that awaits us if we embrace our destiny as Americans, which we did. This was one of the greatest things, one of the biggest events ever to happen in our country. And we're going to make it even better than anybody ever thought possible. That's happening already. We are one people, and we share one faith. Whether we are black or brown or white, we all bleed the same red blood. We all salute the same great American flag. And we are all made by the same Almighty God. As long as we remember these truths, we will not fail. Nobody can beat us. Nobody. We are Americans, and the future belongs to us. The future belongs to you. This is your moment. This is your time. And this, the United States of America, is your country again. So with hope in our souls and patriotism in our hearts, let us now recite these words. Are you ready? Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. Thank you, Kentucky. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight on the stirring rally for Donald Trump in Louisville, Kentucky. And that did not overshadow what happened today. Lots of news, and that is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. The House Intelligence Committee spent a few hours talking with FBI Chief James Comey and NSA boss Admiral Mike Rogers. It was clear from the beginning that there was a political agenda, as there always is. Republican congresspeople wanted to know about the leakers, people within government giving classified information to reporters. That was their top concern. On the Democratic side, it was the Obama tap, the allegation that President Trump tweeted out. At this point, after today's testimony, there's absolutely no evidence President Obama tapped the Trump Tower. But today, White House spokesman Sean Spicer said there will be more tap information forthcoming, especially about the General Flynn situation. Now, the fair thing here is to be fair, avoid speculation, but skepticism on this issue is warranted. In addition to the tap business, Democrats zeroed in on two former members of the Trump campaign, hoping to link them with the Russians. First was a man named Roger Stone, who worked for Mr. Trump for 2 months in 2015. He was a consultant. Second was Paul Manafort, who worked for the Trump campaign for approximately 5 months, but did have a powerful position as campaign chairman. Democrats insinuated that both men were involved in some kind of corrupt scheme, but the Admiral and Mr. Comey would not take the bait, saying the investigation is ongoing and they cannot comment. Both men deny any wrongdoing. Talking Points will be surprised if anything comes of this Russian deal. However, that controversy is what drove President Trump to accuse President Obama. Mr. Trump is so infuriated that the media has obsessed on the alleged Russian connection that he lashed out, trying to create a firestorm over the Obama administration's surveillance history. Problem is, there's no evidence that anything happened at the Trump Tower. There is evidence that the Obama administration surveilled journalists and even the German chancellor, but that does not go to President Trump's point. The accusation that President Obama was actively involved in harming the Trump campaign has now harmed the president himself. He needs the American people to focus on the economy, the new health care proposal, border security, not alleged conspiracies. In the future, the president would be wise to embrace only facts in his pronouncements. The issue of leaks, of course, is of vital importance, but both Comey and Rogers acknowledged that today. It was instructive to see that no Democrat on the House committee really zeroed in on the leakers. Talking Points expects the FBI to find out not only who leaked stuff about General Flynn and the Russian ambassador, but also who violated the White House protocol by putting out the president's conversations with the Prime Minister of Australia and the President of Mexico. If the FBI cannot do that, cannot arrest the leakers, this country's in major trouble. Summing up, Republicans want to get away from the tap thing. Democrats continue to peddle the Russia-Trump campaign situation. That's a memo. Now for the top story reaction. Let's first bring in James Rosen, chief Washington correspondent for FNC. So while you were listening to the tap stuff, and FBI Director Comey tap danced around that, saying he couldn't confirm an investigation, but didn't have any evidence or whatever he said, what's going through your mind since you weren't exactly tapped, but you were surveilled by the Obama administration?
Well, good evening, Bill. Congressman Trey Gowdy of South Carolina posed a series of questions to the FBI director about whether reporters should enjoy an exemption from the laws that make it a felony to disseminate classified information. And I felt at that moment, without resort to conceit, I think, that the specter of James Rosen kind of hung over the hearing room. But beyond that, what we saw on display today, Bill, was the difficulty that lawmakers have in holding James Comey to a coherent, consistent standard in terms of what he discloses about the FBI's investigations and when. In part, this stemmed from the fact that the lawmakers are at a big disadvantage in terms of who holds the information, but in part it's because Director Comey seems at times to make up Comey's rules as Comey goes along. I'll give you an example. Now, he confirmed quite famously today, and this is what all the headlines are about, the existence of an investigation by the FBI in unusual circumstances and where he says it's in the public interest. And he confirmed today, with the authorization of the Department of Justice, that FBI agents are investigating potential coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russian government last year. But when it came to aspects of this story that are of equal public interest, but only potentially more damaging to President Trump's opponents, such as whether Obama aides improperly accessed the names of Americans swept up in foreign surveillance, or whether they leaked classified material to the press, Comey's own criteria of unusual circumstances and public interest suddenly didn't apply, and he couldn't confirm whether FBI agents are also investigating these things.
But didn't he do that with the approval of his boss, the Attorney General? Didn't he get permission to say, yeah, we're investigating the alleged Russian link? But he didn't get permission on the other side. I think that's what he would say.
He told us that he had the special dispensation of the Department of Justice to confirm, yes, that they're exploring alleged coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. He did not tell us that he sought any permission to confirm that he's also investigating.
I don't know if that were asked, though, Rosen. If you were there, it would have been. But I didn't hear it asked. So, look, I'm not a Comey fan. I'm not. But I don't condemn him for what he did today. I think that he operated within the guidelines that he was given. As we know, Attorney General Jeff Sessions has recused himself, but the second in command is saying, okay, you can do this. But I don't know if he did that. Last word.
There were other problems with Comey's testimony today. It was difficult to understand, for example, how and when the FBI arrived at the conclusion that the Kremlin was motivated by a desire to help Donald Trump's campaign, when the FBI had also concluded that the Russians were convinced, like most everyone else, that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election. In other words, how and when could the Kremlin have resolved to help the Trump campaign, as the FBI director maintains, when the Kremlin, by the FBI's own account, believed that the Trump campaign was a lost cause?
Yeah, that was in August. Look, all of this stuff, I don't know if we're ever going to know about it, because, you know, these things drag on forever. But I'm glad you're not in prison, Rosen. That's the big takeaway tonight. You're still cooking. And
back at you, Bill.
But I think these leakers, they got to be arrested. And we're going to deal with whether the press should be arrested, too, with Britt Hume coming up. All right, let's bring in Catherine Harris right now, Fox News chief intelligence correspondent. So what did you pick up? What was the most important thing you heard today from this testimony?
Well, one of the things that jumped out at me, Bill, was right at the end of the hearing, and the Republican chairman, Devin Nunes, seemed somewhat exasperated and even castigated the FBI director, saying that by confirming there's this open counterintelligence investigation, but then giving no indication whether there's evidence of collusion, and these are the congressman's words, he had put a big gray cloud over the current administration. And based on my experience, a CI case or a counterintelligence investigation is not something that's dispensed with in short order. Sometimes they take 2, 3, 4 years before they reach a decision about filing criminal charges. So we may have a very long road ahead here.
Yeah, but you're not going to know anything, and I don't think the folks even care. People who like President Trump made up their mind already, and people who don't have made up their mind already. So the other cable networks will talk about it on infinitum, but I don't think we're even going to hear much about it. A late-breaking story I know you're aware of, that some airlines flying to the U.S. now have banned electronic devices, 13 countries.
That's right. That's right.
So that if you have a laptop, you can't use it on certain planes flying into the USA. Why? What's going on?
Well, based on our reporting, Bill, there's been a real uptick or spike in the threat reporting or the chatter in recent days and weeks, and this will apply to 13 countries flying into the United States, and it will also revive the liquids ban. My bottom line here is that Al-Qaeda is not dead. Al-Qaeda is the group that has really pioneered liquid explosives and had this singular focus on aviation.
All right, so our intel people, and again, that's probably done by wiretap, picked up a lot of chatter about an impending attack, and so the airlines from 13 countries have not been named yet, right? We know Jordan's one of them. Jordan,
that's correct. Jordan, and I think Saudi Arabia, as well. And there may be, some that are in the travel ban, but that's just me speculating here.
We'll know. We'll know shortly. Okay, thank you, Catherine. Now let's bring in Mike Emanuel, Fox News chief congressional correspondent, who was at the Neil Gorsuch hearing today. Any headline come out of that?
Well, Bill, good evening. The highlights seem to be at the end of the day when Neil Gorsuch made his opening statement. He talked about his career as a judge, his family, and people were able to hear his voice and hear his own words. Judge Gorsuch talked about some cynics seeing basically judges as politicians wearing robes. He rejected that. He said that that's not what a life in the law is all about. It seemed significant because this was at the end of the day. He got the last word at a time when critics are saying he's a friend of corporate America, and he sounded like someone who's committed to enforcing the Constitution, following the Constitution and the rule of law.
Right.
I talked to some senior Republicans after the hearing, and they felt like his opening statement would make it a lot harder for some Democrats to oppose him because he sounded quite reasonable and quite measured, Bill.
All right, so he's going to have to stake out his turf as an independent jurist. And when you said at the end of the day, you literally meant at the end of the day. You weren't using that cliche, so I don't have to fine you, Emanuel, and that's a good thing. I do believe that the Democratic Party is going to coalesce, and most of them will vote against him simply because he's not a liberal. Would I be wrong on that belief?
No, you're probably right. They sounded quite irritated still about the outcome of the 2016 campaign. They also sounded irritated that Judge Merrick Garland, who was President Obama's nominee, never even got a hearing. I think if you played a drinking game, taking a drink every time they mentioned the name Merrick Garland, you would be quite drunk, perhaps passed out at this point. And California Democrat Dianne Feinstein, the top Democrat on the panel, said she saw it as her role to basically determine whether he was in the conservative mainstream or not, Bill.
Well, maybe her role is to find out if he's an honest judge. Mike, thanks as always. We appreciate it. Next on the rundown, Charles Krauthammer has been thinking about all that's happened today, as only Charles can. He will be here. Later, Britt Hume on whether journalists should go to jail if they release national security information. And the Factor is coming right back. Impact segment tonight. Let's bring in Charles Krauthammer standing by in Washington. So a lot of verbiage today, lots of chatting back and forth. What was the most important thing you heard?
Well, the most important thing I think today is that the Gorsuch hearings, which should have been a triumphant moment for the Trump administration, that's the best decision he made. That's the one that has the widest support and showed really good judgment, got buried in the other hearings. They were sort of completely overshadowed, and in part, not entirely, but in part because of that tweet that Trump had to put out about the wiretap. And I think that's a self-inflicted wound that is symbolic of how, by many of his idiosyncrasies, he has stepped all over his presidency, particularly the good things he's done and the program he's now advancing. Also lost in the shuffle is the fact that we are just a few days away from a crucial vote on Obamacare repeal that Trump brought up at the rally in Louisville. But it's almost an afterthought. It should be at the forefront. This is a truly historic event if it goes through. Trump is focused on it. You saw him talk about Rand Paul as a kind of a shot across the bow because Rand has been one of the biggest opponents to Trump's revision. But it shows you how the static generated by Trump's shall we say, eccentricities are getting in the way of what could otherwise be a very forceful and effective presidency.
It'll be interesting to see how the rest of the week plays out because, number one, the Gorsuch hearing was buried because nothing really happened. I mean, it was just an opening statement, and there was no questioning. That'll come tomorrow, I think, and then there'll be more exposure. Number two, the president didn't mention any of the surveillance stuff tonight in the speech that I heard. Right? He stayed away from that, right?
Well, he doesn't want to get dragged into this. He already was tweeting in the middle of the hearings, which is an extremely odd event where a president injects himself into an ongoing hearing on the Hill, which creates all kinds of ricochets that are unintended. So he was trying to get into it, but the rally was not the place to do it.
No, but I think that going to your point that maybe he understands that all of this crazy controversy is hurting his agenda. So I was looking for that tonight, and it looked like, they probably just, because normally he would address something that happened like that and say, oh, these pinheads, they're doing this, that, and fake news, nothing really happened. But he stayed away from it all and stayed on policy. So maybe he's changing his style a little bit. Now,
I doubt it.
Okay, but you're not a fan of his, so I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt and saying that maybe, and that's a key word, he is.
Well, in order to comment on somebody, you don't really have to be a fan.
No, but you spin him negative a lot.
When I commented 8 years about Obama, I never heard you say, well, that's because you're not a fan.
I told you that you weren't a fan of him a couple of times. Did you spin Trump negative most of the time? And you know you do. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. You're a commentator. You're paid for your honest opinion. I have never criticized you in that way. But the truth is you spin Trump negative.
Do you disagree that what he did with that tweet?
No, I said in the talking points. Did you hear me?
Disaster. Yeah, and what I heard you say was, I think the way that you put it was, it'd be better if he stuck within the facts.
Yeah.
Which is a euphemistic way of saying, stop making stuff up.
Well,
which is how I would
that's a
put it.
Negative spin. You just proved my point.
Exactly how
you always spin it negative. I say in a fair and balanced way, hey, if you want to get your stuff passed, all right, stay within the facts. Don't give your enemies hand grenades. So that I'm fair and balanced. You spin them negative. And that, and we're both highly paid. All right, now let's get on to the final thing of the leakers. The leakers.
That could be the only thing we have in common.
I'm not even going to go. You're much smarter than I am. I have seeded that for years. The leakers.
Well, you told us.
Were you satisfied with what we heard about the leakers? If the FBI doesn't get them, I'm going to go wild. They need to be tracked down.
As always, the star of the show, Trey Gowdy. Trey Gowdy is the one guy who honed in on this. And the one statement he made that people really didn't see is, we've had all this incredible speculation about the crimes and the collusion and all this, for which there is as yet zero evidence. The only crime we know about, the only thing we know for sure, which was a felony, is the unmasking of Flynn and the leaking of his name. That we know actually happened and actually is a very bad thing.
I got to run, but I want you to make a prediction for us. Do you believe the FBI is going to arrest leakers?
I don't know if they're going to arrest leakers. I think they are going to pursue it. They have to.
They have to. And but if they can't get them, they said 20. There were 20 people. If they can't get them, it doesn't bode well for the country. Charles is over.
We went 40 years before finding out who was the Watergate leaker. It's not that easy.
This one's a little easier. Directly ahead, Brit Hume on an intriguing question. Should journalists who violate national security laws go to prison? Hume, moments away. Hume's own segment tonight. Let's bring in our pal Brett, who joins us from Florida. So earlier today, it was an interesting exchange, and we referenced it, between Congressman Trey Gowdy and FBI Chief James Comey about how to handle journalists who report national security secrets.
Is there an exception in the law for reporters who want to break a story?
Well, that's a harder question as to whether a reporter incurs criminal liability by publishing classified information and one probably beyond my ken. I'm not as good a lawyer as Mr. Schiff said I used to be.
Well, I don't know about that, but the statute does use the word published, doesn't it?
It does, but that's a question I know the Department of Justice has struggled with through administration after administration.
I know the department struggled with it, the Fourth Circuit struggled with it, lots of people have struggled with it, but you're not aware of an exception in the current dissemination of classified information statute that carves out an exception for reporters.
No, I'm not aware of anything carved out in the statute. I don't think a reporter's been prosecuted, certainly in my lifetime, though.
Well, I was wrong. Judith Miller went to prison, and we will have Judith on this program tomorrow. So, Britt, do you believe if a reporter violates national security laws, he or she should be charged?
Well, it depends on how the violation occurred. If the reporter received a leak of classified information and wrote a story about it, and the story was published, I doubt very seriously that under the First Amendment, a reporter could be or would be successfully prosecuted. If, however, the reporter were to come by the leak by a burglary or otherwise some kind of theft or other crime, that would be a different matter.